Thank you, Rupert.
Thank you, Corey. Lovely to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy for me to comprehend being here with you now, because 2 years ago, I was in the deepest depression of my whole life, and having panic attacks about death, and felt like there was no solution. I pulled up your videos and I watched 12 minutes of your videos, and it just cracked my head open completely. And since then, I've been on this path into your teaching and the non-dual teaching. And now standing here with you, just feeling just joy that's coming from inside me. And that I am that joy.
Yes.
It's magic. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, I feel like it should be on the front page of every newspaper that you are love.
You're right, Corey. It should be on the front page of every newspaper. It should be the knowledge that all children learn at school, that peace and joy are the very nature of our being, not something that needs to be acquired or achieved through objects and substances and relationships and so on. But peace and joy are our very nature. And likewise that we share our nature, we share our being with everyone, which is the common experience of love, that this felt sense of our shared being. It is the natural condition of all relationship. It's not something that we find as a result of sharing certain attitudes or a way of life. It's the natural condition of all relationship. Yes, it's everyone should know this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess that's why I wanted to write a song with you about it, is that's my attempt of screaming at the world, nothing is more important than this piece of information.
Yes. It's true. If we were to distill 3,000 years of spiritual and religious understanding into a single sentence, it would read something like, peace and happiness are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything. If we've understood that, we've understood the entire religious and spiritual tradition. And then, of course, we have to live the implications of that understanding to the best of our abilities. But yes, that is the essential thing to learn in life. It's the most important thing to know in life, that the peace, the happiness for which we all long above all else, the happiness that we all love above all else, is our very own nature. It's the nature of our being and can just be found by turning inside.
Right.
It can't be found by acquiring objects, substances, relationships, and so on. And I don't mean to imply that one shouldn't have relationships or engage in activities, or not at all. We just shouldn't do so for the purpose of finding love and happiness. We should find love and happiness where they belong, namely in our being. And then we engage in activities and relationships in order to express that and celebrate that and share that, communicate that.
Yeah. I mean, what I love the most about your teaching is these are things that I've heard before in, various spiritual traditions that I've explored, or books that I've read, or even in popular culture. But what I love about what you do is that with those other teachings, they never really sat with me because I'm still just trusting what someone else says. Yeah. But what you do is you ask me to verify in my own experience as a scientist of my own reality, if I see that what you're saying is accurate to what I'm experiencing.
Exactly. In fact, if somebody were to ask me, would you recommend that I trust what you say or mistrust what you say, I would recommend they mistrust it. But be open to the possibility that there may be some truth in it, and then explore and verify that possibility for yourself.
Right.
And then I as you know, I might provide some tools, pathways to help us explore that. Because it's one thing to say to someone that the peace that you love above all else is the nature of your being. Okay, yes, but how do I find that? How do I access that? So that requires some pathways. But they're only pathways that enable us to find that for ourselves.
Yeah. I think this is kind of an area that I've found really interesting in the work that you do, is that you said something very impactful in one of your lectures. And in building the song, I listened to hundreds of hours of your lectures and your books. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said that every word is a step away from truth.
Yes.
So in a sense, like, the work that you do is speaking to people, but because words are a limitation, a limited function, anything you say is a concession.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Nothing I say is absolutely true. It's what Picasso said so beautifully when he said, "All art tells a lie, but it points to the truth." Mm. And yes, nothing I say is absolutely true, because the truth cannot be, as you rightly say, it cannot be contained in limited words, because the truth is unlimited or infinite. So the purpose of words, or the purpose of the words that I use, is not to define truth. If we want to define truth, we should remain silent. The purpose of the words is to evoke the truth in our experience. So that's what poetry is. You know, nobody ever argues with a poet. Mm-hmm. People argue with philosophers, but they don't argue with poets, because poets aren't trying to describe truth or reality. They're trying to evoke the experience.
Right.
It's what Cézanne said about his painting. He said, I want, in people looking at his paintings, he said, I want to give people the taste of nature's eternity. I don't want to describe nature's eternity to them. I want to give them the taste. I want them to experience it themselves.
Right. And this is what I experience from the way you go about this too, is that, I have been obsessed with Rumi's poetry my whole life, and I never understood really why until exploring his teaching. In my mind, I always thought Rumi was talking about romantic love, or just like a sweet poet guy. Yeah. But now with the word, when I see the word love being what I am, what this is, what all of this is made of, then the poems hit so much harder. Absolutely. Yes. And it's kind of what I see you doing in your work is, it's an art for you. It seems like it came out of the pot, your experience as an artist for decades, right?
Absolutely. I was a ceramic artist for 30 years, making bowls. And then I stopped making bowls, and there was a kind of transition period over a couple of years when my work as a ceramic artist slowly declined, and I started writing and speaking more and more. But it was a kind of seamless, my interior experience was that it was a seamless transition. For someone looking at my career from the outside would say, okay, you stopped being an artist and you're now speaking and writing about non-dual philosophy or the perennial understanding. But my internal experience was not that at all. It was just a continual refinement of the process that I had been on as an artist for 30 years. And I consider now what I do is a kind of art form. It's trying to express the inexpressible, try to find a form that not contains the formless, but evokes the formless in our experience.
Right.
And that's really the work of an artist.
Yeah. And I think that's also why, wherever it is, my favorite work of yours is this book. Yes. Because when I'm reading a lot of the explanations of non-duality, I find my mind attaching to them as an object almost, yes, and being like, oh yes, that is the truth. Yes, yes. But what I love about this work that you did is that the book is filled with juxtapositions that cause me to explore two opposing things that I might latch onto, yes, and then live in this space in between them. Yes. The space between thoughts. Yes. You're asking me to go into my experience of the knower, it feels like to me.
Yes. Yes. Funny enough, that was the first thing I ever wrote. Before I wrote any of my books or started speaking about these matters, this poem I wrote. And in fact, the reason I wrote it was because I was making very large open bowls, and I wanted a long poem to write on the surface of my bowls, so that the I Am poem was a poem that I wrote for that. For that reason. And it was, again, it was supposed to be, it's a long, repetitive, it's more like a hymn or an incantation that you read slowly, repetitively. And it's supposed to not engage us in conceptual or philosophical thinking. It's supposed to bring the what Cézanne called the taste of nature's eternity, bring truth or reality sort of out of the background of our experience into the foreground, but not as a result of our mind having grasped it. It's not something that the mind can grasp. It comes, as it were, from the background of experience. Anything the mind could grasp would be something in the foreground. We reach forwards towards understanding, towards ideas, towards
enlightenment,
or towards enlightenment, or towards happiness. Most people reach forward towards an object, a substance, a relationship. We're used to always reaching forward, and that's why most of us sort of approach the non-dual understanding. We start in exactly the same way that we've started any other endeavor, by reaching towards it. We think there's some understanding we must go towards. No, it's the opposite. It comes from the background, and that requires openness, receptivity. We can't go towards it. We can't grasp it with the mind. It requires a softening of the mind, a relaxation of the mind, a subsidence of the mind, and then this background. It emerges from the background, and then it can be formulated provisionally in response to a situation or a question. But the provisional formulation is just a temporary formulation that tailors the formless truth to a particular event or a particular question. When that event or question is over, then the formulation should be dissolved. We should let go of it completely.
Right.
Otherwise, it becomes a dogma. It turns into a religion.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is also what I love about this practice of self-inquiry, is that it returns spirituality to a personal experience, which makes it unique to every person on their journey. And sometimes I almost think that teaching is a bit of a medicine for a certain condition. Like, I mean, for years I would go to teachers and it wouldn't click. And then for whatever reason, I came to you, and our minds, I guess, work similarly enough, or the way you're looking at it just reaches me in a way.
I mean, in a way, suffering is to the mind what pain is to the body. Conventional medicine developed to address the pain in the body. The spiritual traditions have evolved to address the suffering in our minds. That they are the response to suffering, as medicine is the response to pain.
Yeah,
they give us pathways to find for ourselves the one thing that everybody loves and longs for the most, namely happiness. Not some extraordinary enlightened happiness, just regular happiness.
And that's what I love about your teaching too, is the idea that everyone has the ability to access it.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and it can't be given by someone. It can be recognized. And others can help us to recognize it by questioning, by suggesting pathways. But it's in everybody, no matter how dense or opaque their minds may be. It lives in the hearts of everyone. It is the very nature of everyone.
Right. And that's what you said in the middle of the song. Love is our natural state.
Yes.
We don't need to cultivate it. We simply need to recognize it.
Yes, exactly. It's the natural state. It's the natural condition of all relationship. Take what's going on in the world in politics at the moment. We see these warring factions, individuals and communities that hate each other and will destroy each other as a result of it. They don't realize that they love these people. The people that they're in conflict, they don't realize that the natural state of their relationship with these people is love. They don't feel it because of the sense of separation, because of the profound sense of separation that's clouded their true nature. Right. Their true nature is still there. Their true nature of love is still there, and that love is shared with everybody. They just don't feel it. They feel it with a few people, their children and their close family. But love is not just the natural condition of our relationship with our nearest and dearest. Love is the natural condition of our relationship with everybody, whether we like them or not. We may not agree with them. We may not even like them particularly. We're not called to like everybody. That's not possible. But we are called to love everybody.
Right.
And that's the tragedy, really, when we look at situation. It's true of individual conflicts, conflicts between communities, conflicts between nations. The tragedy is that the natural state, the natural condition of these relationships is love, and people just don't realize it.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what I'd love to dive under at that too is I think it might be easy for people to kind of brush that aside and be like, yeah, love's important, everyone loves love. But when you say love, I mean, you're talking about a higher reasoning, logical assessment of literally what the fabric of reality is.
Yes, exactly. I'm not talking about a fuzzy feeling of warmth that comes over us and that we extend towards a particular person. It may be expressed in that way, but that is itself not the experience of love. The experience of love, as you say, is more. It's more clinical than that. It's almost scientific, like you say. The experience of love is the recognition that we share our being with everyone and everything, and that's got nothing to do with what we feel for that person,
right?
Because it's much deeper than our feelings. Our being lies beneath our feelings. Our feelings come and go; they're always changing. Our feelings for a person can change, but the fact that we share our being with everyone, that never changes.
Right.
It's like, to give you an analogy, it's like if you take the space in this room, and you take the space in every building on the earth. All the buildings are different shapes and different sizes, but the space in each building is the same space. That there aren't numerous spaces. There are numerous buildings, but there aren't numerous physical spaces in the universe. Every building shares the same space, the same universal space, but it's exactly the same. Our being, there are numerous different thoughts and feelings. There are many different bodies, but the being that each of us knows as the pure experience I am, that essential being, before it is qualified by experience, that's shared. There aren't numerous beings, there's just being. And that's what each of us essentially is. And love is that recognition, just the felt recognition that however the other thinks, feels, acts, behave, however they think and act, underneath all of that, we are the same being. So it's love in this sense. It's not really a feeling. It can be expressed in our feelings. Because when you feel that towards another, when you feel that what I essentially am beneath our thoughts and feelings is the same shared being, then we tend not just to see the others as a bundle of thoughts that we may or may not, or a physical body that we may or may not like or agree with. Our primary experience with them is this relationship of our shared being. And that tends to make us feel warmly towards them. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll agree with them. We can still disagree. Right. We can still have a conversation where we might disagree, but the conversation is informed by this felt sense of our shared being. And that brings, that gives the disagreement, if there's a disagreement between two people, the best possible chance of resolving in a direction that is consistent with this fundamental fact, the unity of being, the fact that at the deepest level, everyone and everything are one.
Right. And that's what you ask at the end of the song, is for people to let the person fade away, but allow the love to remain.
Exactly. The person being this bundle of thoughts, images, feelings, memories, attitudes, bodily sensations, relationships, and so on. The bundle is the person is this bundle of this kind of package of thoughts and feelings and so on. And as you say, that fake, none of that is essential to us. Our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, they're always vanishing. So there's no entity there. There's no real identity there. The real identity is our being.
Right.
And as the person fades away, our being comes into the foreground. That's the experience of love, and that's when you begin to feel that the experience of love begins to be not just the background of your experience, but it begins to pervade your relationships. And as a result, for instance, the conflicts in your relationships begin to diminish. So your relationships begin to have this warmth and intimacy and friendliness about them.
And I mean, and for me, that was game changing in dealing a fatal blow to my fear of death. So I started really from the first time I learned about physics. When I was 11 years old, I started having panic attacks around the fear of death. And I would cry myself to sleep, and my mom was a social worker, a child social worker, and couldn't help because she couldn't solve the problem of my belief that I would die.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm a pretty rational mind, so it took. No one could convince me that that wasn't true. And what I realized from your teaching, through my own experience of reality, is that I have a belief that I'm a body.
Yes.
But that's when I investigate the experience deeply, that's actually not accurate to my experience.
Yes.
And I think you convey this best. You have people close their eyes and they, I can't find a border of my experience at all.
Yes.
So my idea that there is a division between myself and other things is actually a belief. It's not based in evidence.
Yes. Yes, exactly. If we were to close our eyes now and not refer back to our past knowledge or memory, but were just to refer to the raw data of our experience, there'd be thoughts, there'd be feelings, and there'd be sensations of the body, the tingling sensation of the hands or the face or the feet, but we wouldn't know they were hands and face and feet. To know that, we have to refer back to past knowledge. So, for instance, if we were to imagine that we were a newborn infant, the newborn infant has sensations. It experiences its hands and its face and its feet, but it has no idea that it is experiencing hands or face or feet. It has no idea that it has a body or that it is a body, but it's experiencing sensations. It just doesn't conceptualize them as a body. And those sensations are, as you say, if you actually explore the raw sensation itself, it's nothing like the visual perception of the body from the outside. The sensation is more like an amorphous, tingling cloud floating in the empty space of awareness with no clearly defined border. It has no gender, it has no age, it has no size, it has no shape. So yes, our actual experience of the body and our concept of the body are two very different things, and we overlay our concept of the body on top of the experience. So we experience the body in a way that's consistent with the concept of it. We remove the concept of it and we just experience the raw experience itself. And as you say, the body is relieved of a limit. It feels open and spacious and light and intimately in contact with its environment. There isn't this impervious boundary between the edge of the body and the environment in which it exists.
Yeah, and then when I stay there in exactly that place that you're talking about and just observe my experience, I then start to notice that the sounds that I'm hearing now are actually inside me. They're not over there.
Yes, exactly. Not inside you, the body. Inside you, this aware openness in which both the sounds and the tingling vibration, which we will later conceptualize as a body, appear. So yes, it's the feeling of awareness being locked up inside the body. It expands. Awareness becomes the vast borderless container in which the tingling sensations of the body, the sounds of people talking, our thoughts and feelings, our memories, in which they're all appearing like so many birds and clouds floating and flying through the sky.
Right.
But we are this aware openness in which it is all arising, and that openness never changes. Its content, thoughts, feelings, the body, that comes and goes, but the space in which they all appear, that always remains. That doesn't disappear.
And I think this was another key point for me around the fear of death. That the first step was, wait, I maybe am not what I think I am.
Yes.
But then I was like, okay, well maybe I'm this amorphous cloud, but it's still going to come to an end. And then you started teaching about how time is an illusion, and that really blew my mind. And initially I wasn't there, and I actually had to go to a retreat from your teacher, Francis, when he introduced me to the concept of perenity. But I'd love to just like hear your proof on it, because I love it that time exists in me. I don't exist in time.
I'd push it even further, Corey. Time seems to exist in you, but the actual experience of time, it doesn't exist. For instance, in order to experience time, I mean, we undoubtedly experience what we call now. If I say, if I refer to the now, we both know what that refers to. That's an experience. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is, we're experiencing the now.
Yeah.
So let's subject the idea of time to the scrutiny of experience. Be like proper scientists. Okay, we have a theory of time. Okay, let's put it under the microscope. So the first thing to do, obviously, is to go there, go to the past. Okay, we think that there is this line of time, and that the now is just a moment, a present moment, sandwiched between this on this everlasting line of time. But try, for instance, to step out of the now and experience the past, and not to think about that. We can all think about breakfast this morning, but can you actually step out of the now and actually experience the past?
Right. No, you can't. Yeah.
Right now or at any time?
I don't think anyone ever has or ever could.
Nobody ever has, or nobody ever has, because whatever we experience, we by definition, experience always takes place now, whatever now is. So we have this idea that the now is a moment on a line of time. But when we investigate that line of time and try to experience it, as you say, nobody ever has or nobody ever could experience it. It's a concept. I'm not saying it's not a valuable concept. It's a concept that is not just valuable, necessary for everyday life. But we're not concerned here with practical, whether time is required for practical matters or not. It is. But we're interested in here in whether time is true, whether it's real, whether there really is something in reality, right, that relates to our concept of time. And if we look closely, there isn't. Nobody has or could ever step out of the now. Nobody could experience the past or the future. So if we stay close to our experience, the now is not a moment in time. The now is eternity. It is eternal, not everlasting. There is no time present for the mind to exist in. The now is the eternal now. It's in the vertical dimension of being. It's not on the horizontal line of time. And I would suggest that it is the mind, the human, and in fact, not just any mind, but a human mind that refracts the eternal now and spreads it out and makes it appear as time. Right. So time is part of our cognitive apparatus. It's not inherent in reality. Reality is eternal, not everlasting, eternal, ever present, not in time. But when we view reality through the narrow slit of a human mind, it appears as time, because the mind is limited, and therefore it imposes its own limitations on whatever it perceives or conceives. So when the mind tries to look at eternity, it sees time.
Right. And this is related to everything else that you describe about how our experience is filtered through our senses. Our senses are inherently limiting machines. Like our ears don't see. Our ears are focused on sound. And so they're limiting everything of reality into a very, very small experience.
Yes.
And I mean, you said something in one of your other, I think it was Transparent Body, Luminous World, where you said that imagine how incredible the universe is now through such limited filters.
Yes.
And then imagine how incredible the universe actually is.
Yes, yes. Yes, we see in a way a dumbed down version of reality, a version of reality that is consistent with the limitations of the perceiving faculties through which we see it. As human beings, we have 5 perceiving faculties: seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. And surprise, surprise, reality appears to us as sights, sounds, textures, tastes, and smell. Is that a coincidence?
Right.
Of course it's not. Reality appears to us in a way that is consistent with the faculty through which we perceive it, If we look at white snow through orange tinted glasses, the snow will appear orange. If we look at the reality through 5 senses, it will appear in the form of sight, sounds, tastes, textures, and smells. That they are not inherent in reality. They are how reality appears to our very limited minds.
And science is arriving at that conclusion too. I don't know if you've spoken with Donald Hoffman.
We have not yet, but we haven't. But we have a conversation actually lined up. In fact, I've been in correspondence with him these last couple of weeks. I'm not sure that we found a date yet, but we have a conversation coming up.
I'll be listening.
That will be a beautiful conversation because he's one of a few scientists I know. I'm sure there are others. I'm just not aware of them. But he's, I would suggest, one of the leading scientists, along with philosopher Bernardo Kastrup, who would share this understanding pretty well, exactly, although they express it in different terms. Yes.
Right. And I don't want to speak for him, but it seems, I studied evolutionary biology in school, and it seems so obvious, this evolutionary game theory approach to the same information, which is that even if you look at yourself as a body, your job is to survive. And so it's actually to limit the experience towards survival, which is again the same thing, limiting the experience of the infinite into this experience right now, which you also speak about is, which I found really interesting, is that, what we truly are, eternal love, when there's no divisions, there's no borders in what we are, like the way that we know ourselves is by taking the form of the finite.
The way that we know the world, we know the world through the finite mind. It's not possible to perceive reality directly for the same reason that it's because, well, I should say, I don't mean say we can't perceive reality, because we are. Right. We are localized, a localization of reality. What I mean is it's not possible for reality to perceive itself directly as an object. For the same reason, it's not possible for the eyes to see themselves. Reality is too close to itself to be able to turn around, so to speak, and look at itself. So in reality's experience of itself, there's no objective content.
Right.
In order for reality to appear in form, it must localize itself as a separate subject of experience. That's each of us. And it's only from the perspective of that separate subject of experience that the formless reality appears in form, that is, as the universe. However, to know ourselves, we don't, and indeed we can't, know ourselves through the finite mind. Because whatever we, as we said earlier, whatever we perceive through the finite mind shares the limitations of that mind. Right. So if we looked at ourselves through the finite mind, that is through thinking and perceiving, the way we would experience ourselves would be as objects or entities or people that share the limitations of our conceptual, perceptual faculties. In other words, we'd experience ourselves as something limited. But we can experience ourselves directly. Everybody has the experience I am. And the reason why everybody can say from their experience I am is because everybody knows that I am. In other words, in everybody there is this awareness of being. And that awareness of being is a unique experience. It's the only experience there is that is not filtered through conception or perception. Mm-hmm. It's the only direct, unmediated experience there is. And this is why this investigation into our essential nature must sooner or later be incorporated in the scientific method, because the awareness of being is the only experience there is that is not mediated through perception and thought. Right. And therefore, it's the only experience there is through which we get a direct access to reality, or rather, that reality gets direct access to itself.
Right. And this, you also mentioned this in a lecture where you said you think the really interesting question of science is not how consciousness came from matter, but how did matter come from consciousness?
Absolutely. The only reason why the hard problem of consciousness has been, at least until recently, and still is such a hot topic in science, is because we presume that consciousness does come from matter. Okay, if we take that presumption as true, then we have the hard problem of consciousness. How does consciousness arrive from matter? Instead of trying to solve that question, we should remove the presumption.
Right.
Remove the presumption that consciousness does arise from matter. Investigate the nature of our experience. See that what we call matter, the outside world, arises from consciousness. That's consistent with our experience. So then the really interesting question becomes, as you write, it's the hard problem of matter. Right. How does matter, something that seems to be temporary, finite, limited, devoid of consciousness, how does that arise out of and exist in something which is itself conscious? That becomes a really interesting question. That's really the next question for science, the hard problem of matter, not the hard problem of consciousness.
Is that a next question for you? Are you investigating that question yourself?
Corey, I've been investigating this question for 45 years. Yeah. The conclusion I've come to is this. How does matter arise from consciousness? It doesn't. Ultimately, there is no such stuff as matter. Well, let's take the dream analogy. When we have a dream at night, our mind imagines a dream world within itself, and at the same time localizes itself as a separate subject of experience within its own dream, from whose point of view it then looks at its own mind, but it doesn't see a mind, it sees the world, a dream world. So this gives us a beautiful model. If every time we fall asleep at night, our own mind, which is just a mini field of consciousness, imagines a dream world, which is only the activity of our minds. But when we view it from a localized perspective, the activity of our minds doesn't appear as mind, it appears as matter,
right? A
dream world. Now, could that be a model for what's taking place in reality? Just upgrade. Instead of thinking of a dream world taking place inside an individual dreamer's mind, consider the possibility that this world is the dream of a universal mind or infinite consciousness, which perceives its own activity from the localized perspective of each of our minds. So we as individuals, as people, are like the localized characters in the dream of infinite consciousness, from whose perspective it perceives its own activity as an outside world. There's no real outside world there. There's nothing really made out of matter. Matter is just how the activity of mind appears from our limited and localized perspectives.
Right.
So matter is just the name that the separate subject of experience gives to reality. So from the separate subject of experience, that is each of us, reality appears to be outside of itself and separate from itself. And indeed, it is separate, or seemingly separate from the point of view of each individual. But from the point of view of the dreamer's mind, the infinite consciousness, there is just its own homogeneous and indivisible activity. There's no separation. There are no objects. There are no people. There's no matter. There are no things. There is just the one infinite reality appearing to itself as a universe without ever actually ceasing to be itself. So in the end, we start off, we change the hard problem of consciousness to the hard problem of matter as a halfway stage, as a concession to the scientists who believe that consciousness evolves from matter. But in the end, we realize, no, matter doesn't evolve from consciousness. There is no such stuff as matter.
Right.
There are no things.
And this is reconfiguring who I identify as. Like,
absolutely.
I think before I was like, oh, I'm Corey experiencing the universe. And now my perspective is I'm the universe having a Corey experience.
Exactly. Exactly. Each of us is the one universal, indivisible reality, localizing itself temporarily as each of our points of view. And we are free to identify as the localized point of view. And the inevitable consequence of that is suffering on the inside and conflict on the outside. Or we identify ourselves as the one universal reality, and the inevitable consequence of that approach is peace on the inside and love and harmony on the outside.
And I think it's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life, that what I am, what this is eternal love, eternal peace, eternal happiness.
Yes.
Like that's actually what's going on.
Yes, and the reason we call it love, it's not, as you alluded to earlier, it's not just a romantic notion. The reason we call it love is because we know in the experience of love, love is the felt sense of the absence of separation. When we feel we love someone, we by definition feel that we are one, that the sense of separation dissolves and we feel one with the other. That's what the experience of love is. Well, that's how the universal consciousness experiences all the time, because from its point of view, there are no others, there are no objects, there is just itself, taking the shape of 10,000 things, but never actually knowing any individual thing. So love is its nature. Love is all it knows.
Right. And you can also, what I love is I can verify that myself, that when I step back more into the role of knower, what I notice is that, I freely accept this image of you, this sound of the person walking outside, this sensation that's happening now. And what is our idea of love? It's unconditionally accepting.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Things.
Yes. Yes. It's just this, because in love, there's no recognition of any real boundary.
Right.
Between there's no rejection. Everything is the differences and the distinctions between things only exist at the level of appearances.
Right.
But the reality of those appearances is indivisible, and it's a unified field.
So I'm glad you said that, because I think this is kind of where I'm at now, and then the laundry part, where, I'm identifying as the universe having a core experience. I recognize that I am love. Yes. Everything is love. So then, how do I make decisions? How do I choose one thing over another thing when the separations are not real and everything is myself?
Well, we try to lead a life to the best of our ability in a way that is consistent with this understanding. We have thoughts and feelings, and we engage in activities and relationships that express in one way or another this understanding. Mm. So, for instance, what you're doing with your music, that would be a very good example of it. Your profession, you're a musician, and you use your music to share this understanding. Yeah. And any decision, well, some thoughts, for instance, would arise just on behalf of the body. For instance, I'm hungry. You experience hunger, so the thought comes, okay, I must cook dinner. I must go to the supermarket or whatever. So that's a thought that arises on behalf of the well-being of the body.
Yeah.
And whereas the thoughts that inform your creative work as a musician are thoughts that arise on behalf of love, the unity of being. The thoughts and feelings that diminish. Mm-hmm. Are the thoughts and feelings that arise on behalf of a finite psychological self.
Right. I want this. I need this.
I need this. Not the body. It's perfectly legitimate if you're sick to the thought, I must call the doctor. If you're hungry, I must get some food. Those are thoughts that don't arise on behalf of a fictitious separate self. They're thoughts that just arise on a practical basis in the service of the body. But the thoughts that cease arising, or at least begin to arise less and less, are the thoughts that arise on behalf of a self, a separate psychological self.
Yeah. And then I guess to pry even deeper, then I encounter the issue for myself of I see suffering, I should just give all of my money to that suffering, give all my time. But there's this self-preservation aspect that comes in, but then I don't like it because it's associated with my, identification, separateness. I think that's kind of...
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's true that if you see suffering, one response to that suffering would be to sell your home, give away all your money, and go and live on the streets as a result. And that would no doubt benefit one or a small number of people, or many people if you're very wealthy. Yeah. But you would then become someone in need of somebody else's care, and your ability to ease suffering in other people would be vastly diminished.
Right.
You'd no longer be in a position to do so. So although it would be one option,
Yeah.
there are many, many other options. For instance, what you're doing with your music, you're not just helping one or two people that are starving and need it. Your music is potentially touching millions of people, bringing this understanding to millions of people. Well, in order to do that,
Yeah.
you need a home, you need a film crew, you need a band, you need your desire to have all those things are in line with
In service
and
of. Yeah.
in service of your love of truth.
Right.
That they're not there to enhance your feeling of separation or the separate self. You're not doing it for recognition, for fame, for money, or I mean, you may get recognition as a result of it, but that would be a byproduct. You're obviously not doing it for that reason. And indeed, if you did get recognition for it, it wouldn't be a bad thing. That would only increase
Amplify.
your ability to communicate this message in the world. So again, even if fame were to come your way, fame is not always an egoic thing. It can be used in the service of love and truth. There are obvious examples of plenty of very well-known famous people whose work is in service of love and truth. Of course, the opposite is also the case.
Yeah. It's just music seems to me as such a powerful vehicle.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's like, not just, I mean, in the numbers, it's like, a Beyonce song, music video gets half of the world's population,
Yes.
in views.
Yes.
But I think the other part of it too, which I imagine, I'm curious about when you went from pots to words, that there's an aspect of art, for me in music, that's beyond words, that allows me to communicate what's happening here without this clunky thing up here.
Yes, it's true. I went from pots to words. It wasn't a calculated decision. It was just something that happened organically and spontaneously, and I just cooperated with it. And I feel that what I'm expressing now with words is really exactly the same that I was trying to express through my work as a ceramic artist. But I certainly reach far more people now than I did then. Not that that's a reason for not suggesting it's better what I'm doing now. Reaching a large number of people isn't the goal. Some of us reach large numbers of people, some of us don't, and that's not important.
Right.
But and likewise, just because, as we said earlier, words can never describe truth or reality, they can be used skillfully to evoke that experience. There's a lovely quotation from a Zen master. He said, if I speak, I tell a lie, but if I remain silent, I'm a coward. It's true. Everything we've said during this conversation is, and the ultimate analysis, not quite true.
And that's
but if we remain, we could, as a result of that, decide never to speak about these things and to remain silent. But for me, I would be turning away from what I feel is a kind of sacred duty, a sort of sacred calling to speak my understanding, such as it is.
Yeah,
I would be turning away from something that has been planted in me that wants to express itself, and I feel it's my sacred duty to express that, such as it is, and for it to be heard by as many or as few people as hear about it.
Well, I'm so glad that you feel that way, because my experience is that you're so skillful at it. I mean, you changed the trajectory of my whole life, and I watch you in retreats and online. I mean, just like, you are breaking people open left and right to see the joy and the love and the beauty in themselves. And so, I'm so grateful that you're still speaking.
Yeah, well, that's sweet of you to say so, Corey. I love words, although I readily acknowledge that words can't describe reality. At the same time, I love words. I love poetry. I've always loved poetry. I love the evocative power of language. And I don't use language, although as you know, I can be very clinical and rational. Really, I feel that words have an evocative power, not a descriptive power. And I use words in that way. I've also, as I said earlier, been exploring these matters for 45 years. And over that time, what used to be long pathways of exploration and reasoning, they become more and more condensed.
Right.
And as you probably noticed even for the few years that you've been listening, my language has become more minimal, cleaner, clearer. I've and continue to do so, to distill the essence of my understanding, such as it is, into simpler, cleaner, clearer, more direct, more experiential, more evocative pathways.
Right.
And that's the work of, and as you know, an artist's work is, artists are never satisfied. They always think, oh, I can just do that a little bit better. I can just say that a little bit clearer. I can say, and if we were satisfied, we'd stop doing our art. If you thought with this last song, that's it, it's the perfect song, you'd stop making song. But you don't. It's
True.
A beautiful song, but you might give yourself a week's holiday, and then you'll be on to the next one. I've got something else to say. I can say it just a little bit better.
Well, the first time that I played the finished song for you was the weekend when I started writing a song inspired by that experience with you. So,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Well, I think, the most beautiful words that I've heard you say for me is, "I am the love with which I love."
Exactly. Yes.
I think that really sums it up for me.
Yes. Exactly. Beautiful.
Rupert, thank you so much.
Not at all, Corey. It's a pleasure to
incredible.
Speak with you. And that an hour. It flew by.
Thank you so much for the generosity of time.
No, not at all. It's a pleasure. You're super easy to talk to and very flowy and like all good interviewers, you should never feel that you're being interviewed. You just feel you're chatting with a friend, which is, of course, what
well,
we
it was
are
also,
doing.
it was the process of this song. It was like it was such a joy to go that deep into teaching, and then to say the words and to sing the words and to re-explore them with your voice and my voice. And it was, Well, thank you for your trust, really, from the beginning.
Not at all. But I've always loved the work you do, and I'm very honoured that you want to use what I'm doing in your work, and I'm very well. I'm honoured by it, but I'm also very touched by it. So,
well, best gift of my life you gave me. So just mirroring the light.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.